It was just past midnight when the phone rang. A number no one recognized. A voicemail clicked on automatically, the kind you think is a wrong number at first. But the voice on the other end was calm, too calm, almost casual. "Don't worry. I'm just outside. I'm waiting." And then nothing. Silence. Just the faint hiss of the line. The kind of call that makes your stomach tighten, even if you tell yourself it's probably nothing. Just a prank. Just some drunk kid testing their town's nerves. Except the feeling didn't leave. And deep down, something in that quiet, collected voice whispered, "Someone is watching, and you won't see them coming." The phone line went dead, but the room felt louder somehow. The hum of electricity in the walls, the ticking of a cheap clock. Every small sound suddenly felt like footsteps in the dark. You stare at the door longer than you should, half expecting the handle to move on its own. Later, when you try to explain that fear, people will say it was just anxiety, just your imagination. But fear like that doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from the body sensing something the mind hasn't caught up with yet. He smiled easily. Charming. People called him talented. His photographs hung in galleries, won awards, praised in magazines. He had a presence that drew you in, the kind of person who made strangers feel like old friends. But behind the camera lens, behind the carefully groomed suits and rehearsed smiles, there was a shadow. One that grew longer and darker with each passing day. The neighborhood women barely noticed him at first. He seemed harmless, polite, a man with a portfolio and a camera, nothing more. And that's how he liked it. The ordinary masks, the extraordinary, and the extraordinary in this case, was terrifying. Charm is a powerful disguise. It disarms suspicion before suspicion even has time to form. A warm smile, a gentle laugh, a compliment said at just the right moment. These are the tools of trust. And when people trust you, they open doors. Sometimes literal doors. Sometimes doors inside their lives they never meant to open to a stranger. Teenagers loved posing for him. Some would describe him later as funny or interesting, someone who made them feel special. He would ask simple questions, then coax a laugh, a glance, a photograph. But behind every click of the shutter, there was a silent calculus. Which ones might disappear quietly? Which ones would never be seen again? No one ever guessed that the friendly man with the camera could vanish into the night with someone's life in his hands. No one guessed, because people don't want to. Guess when Chumhide's menace start to be seen as powerful, especially when you're young. When someone tells you that you look important, beautiful, worth remembering, it sticks. It fills a small empty space inside the chest. He understood that hunger. He fed it just enough to make them trust him. And then he took everything else. It was always routine for him. A car ride, a suggestion of a model's session, a small studio tucked behind some unremarkable building, and then the room itself a quiet, controlled space. He would speak softly, his voice almost soothing, a lullaby for the weary. And then, just like that, the ordinary world slipped away. The street lights outside kept blinking. The city breathed. People walked, completely unaware that just blocks away, the air was thick with someone else's terror. Sometimes he would let them go, sometimes he wouldn't. It wasn't random. It was a rhythm, a pattern hidden beneath layers of normality. There's something especially cruel about violence that happens quietly. No screams heard, no alarms raised. Just another door closing in a city full of doors, and outside, life goes on. Buses pass, couples laugh, someone buys coffee. The world keeps moving, unaware that a life is being broken behind an ordinary wall. Police reports began trickling in, small at first: missing girls, teenagers last seen with strangers. And then the pattern emerged, a chilling repetition of time, location, and circumstance. But no one suspected him. How could they? He was the face of normal. He volunteered, he dated, he photographed. And if anyone noticed the odd coincidences, they brushed them off, because the truth didn't want to be seen. It waited, patient, until the veil slipped. Patterns are only obvious in hindsight. When you're living inside them, everything feels random, unconnected, just bad luck happening to the wrong people, and evil loves that confusion. It hides inside coincidence. It survives because no one wants to believe the worst about someone who smiles at them. One evening, a teenager disappeared from a busy street corner. Witnesses swore they saw her talking to him, laughing even. And that laugh, so casual, so bright, would be the last sound anyone ever associated with her. The investigation began, slow at first, hampered by lack of evidence. Each lead ended with frustration, each tip unfulfilled. It felt like chasing a shadow that was always one step ahead, always smiling behind the darkness. And the smilo, it haunted everyone who ever saw it. There's something unbearable about the last moments people remember. A laugh, a wave, a casual goodbye. Moments that feel meaningless at the time, but later become sacred because they're all that's left. Families replay these memories over and over, searching for a sign, something they could have noticed, something that might have saved her, years past. His life unfolded like a curated gallery of normality. He dated famous actresses, charmed his way into cameras and studios, and yet there were whispers, rumors that refused to die. They couldn't be pinned down, couldn't be proven. Yet every now and then, a photograph would turn up, a girl in the frame, her eyes wide and searching, the setting innocent, yet the feeling utterly wrong. Something in the angle, the background, the tilt of the head those who looked closely felt it, the unease, the quiet, human fear that said, this man's eyes see more than just the lens sees. Photographs are meant to freeze moments, to preserve beauty, to make time stand still. But some images feel wrong, like time didn't just stop, it held its breath. And once you notice that feeling, you can't unsee it. The image stays with you longer than it should. It follows you into the dark. Then came the major twist. Evidence surfaced linking him to multiple disappearances. Not in a chaotic spree, but meticulously, methodically. Items, photographs, tiny, overlooked details and police archives all converging into one inescapable conclusion. He wasn't just a man with a pattern. He was the pattern. The charming, handsome face of the American 1970s, hiding a mind that orchestrated terror with a terrifying normalcy. And as investigators dug deeper, they found things even more unsettling. Trophies, keepsakes, reminders of lives snatched with deliberate care. He hadn't just been hunting, they were his trophies. When patterns finally connect, the truth hits like cold water to the face. Everything suddenly makes sense. Every small, ignored detail becomes heavy with meaning, and the realization is worse than ignorance. The monster was never hiding in the shadows. He was standing in the light the whole time. Finally, after years, the full truth unfolded. Rodney Alcala, the man who appeared in magazine covers, the man who smiled on television, the man everyone thought was just a little strange but harmless. He was a serial killer. His victims, young girls mostly, vanished quietly, and the world had seen nothing because he had learned the oldest trick: hide in plain sight. Charming, educated, photogenic, meticulous. He manipulated, lured, and captured with a cold intelligence that seemed human and yet so far removed from empathy. Each life he touched ended in silence, and the world only slowly realized the depth of the horror behind that practiced smile. The hardest part to accept is that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like someone you'd let into your home, and once you understand that, the world never feels quite as safe in the same way again. And in the end, when you imagine him, camera in hand, smiling at the next face, thinking you are safe, remember this: he spent decades blending into the everyday, living beside us, smiling at our neighbors, capturing memories while stealing lives. The darkness was always in the frame, always waiting for the perfect angle. And somewhere, in a quiet, unremarkable room, the lens still focuses. Evil doesn't always rush. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it studies you. Sometimes it smiles first. And the most terrifying part, it doesn't look terrifying at all.